Hello! Welcome to the inaugural episode of Family Movie Night, a relatives podcast. My name is Austin, and I'm joined here by...
Quinn.
And?
Autumn.
And we are starting this podcast. Our goal is to create a fun show, a laid-back vibe for the podcast where we can have some fun and talk about the movies that we love. We hope to make it inclusive and easily accessible. Whether you're a film savant, movie buff, or just want to learn a little more about the moving pictures, we welcome you. For our first show, we're going to run down our top 10s of 2018, followed by some spoiler talk from some of our favorites. So without further ado, let's begin.
Heck yeah.
Such a good
All
host.
Right. Yeah, thank you. So, Autumn, would you run down your top 10 from 2018? Let
Absolutely.
us know what's going on.
All right. So my top 10 of 2018 starts, we're going to go from the number 10 all the way to number 1. So my first one, my number 10, is Sorry to Bother You. Thought it was a great film. Boots Riley's first directorial debut. Super interesting movie. Bright colors, really fast editing, unusual. Everything about this movie stood out as being entirely unique in its own thing. I really enjoyed it. I think there were some misses and some hits, but I loved it overall. So it's up on the list, but that's why it's number 10. My number 9 is Isle of Dogs. I'm a huge fan of Wes Anderson, so that's just a kind of a given for me. I love his comedy style. I love the way that the characters interact. It's always so funny. He uses makes the most of every silence in between all the characters. There's never a dull moment in a Wes Anderson film. Plus, I'm a big fan of claymation because every time I watch a claymation movie, I'm just like, holy shit, this took so long to make. It's so much effort, so I'm always just impressed. My number 8 is Blind Spotting. I think potentially one of the most underrated movies of the year. I got a lot of hype, but nobody watched it. The people, it's really high ratings. People loved it, but I don't know anyone personally who's really seen it other than the people that I've showed it to who are big movie fans. I'm a big fan of Daveed Diggs as well. He's a great rapper as well as a great actor, so I was really happy to see him approach a movie that kind of blended those two. Have you guys seen it?
We haven't seen it.
No, I haven't seen it.
And you just told me about Daveed Diggs. Can you just say again? I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Talk
stuff
about that.
him.
So
about that.
Daveed Diggs is when I first found out about him, it was because he's a rapper in a group called Clipping, and Clipping is an experimental harsh noise hip hop group that uses crazy sound effects like broken glass, chainsaw noises, and screams to create beats, and then he raps and really, really fast. This is kind of a weird thing, but he's the fastest rapper to ever be on Broadway, which links into my next thing because he was one of the stars of the original cast of Hamilton. He played 2 roles. I believe it was Lafayette and also I don't remember the name, but one of the main roles. And he's super talented, and he decided to write Blind Spotting with his childhood best friend about what it was like growing up in Oakland. It's a great movie. It's to be honest, it seems like a full-length episode of Atlanta, but with a different crew. It's got that same sort of energy.
Sweet.
So if you like Atlanta, it's worth checking out.
Cool.
Next, my number 7 is You Were Never Really Here. Great film starring Joaquin Phoenix. We're going to get into that later, so I'm going to gloss over it for now. Number 6 would be Boy Erased, a fantastic film. Really, it kind of speaks for itself if you know what the movie's about. Really emotional, it's just emotional as hell. Really great acting from everyone involved in that film. And I watched it most recently, so I have a little bit less, time to mull over it, but I just found that the story was super striking and impactful to me because of the fact that it was a true story about something that's really, really fucked up. So watching that whole movie, I was just sort of enthralled. I was like, holy shit, this is actually happening to people. Number 5, A Quiet Place. A lot of what made this movie so spectacular to me as a musician is the sound design. I'm just blown away by how every single tiny sound was felt like it was happening all around you, just so enthralling. They're so tense all the way through. One of those movies you can't take your eyes away from it. Number 4, Eighth Grade. Fantastic film. Bo Burnham's directorial debut. There's not much I can say about this movie that hasn't already been said. It was just brilliant. I definitely suggest watching that. My number 3, Black Klansman. I thought this movie was so awesome. Really well acted. I loved the directing. Spike Lee killed it in that movie. With that movie, I guess. There's a lot of important social things that were touched on in that movie. I thought it was a clever thing to talk about a modern issue, but in a way that made it feel, obviously, it's not just a modern issue. So to go back to the 70s to discuss how things haven't really changed from then, by like having it be not set in the modern era, and then at the end having all these clips of those things not having changed yet and having all these problems still in the modern era really grounded the film for me.
Yeah, I agree. I remember sitting in the theater, and when it comes up from Charlottesville, and I was like, wow, Jesus, it's still happening. And then the timestamp is like 2017.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. It's like happening like when the movie was being made.
Oh, yeah.
So
it was crazy. Definitely like an impactful movie. I remember watching that movie and just like sitting there at the end and just having so many thoughts and feelings. It's pretty crazy to be watching a film and having like most of the main characters be like extremely racist people. So you're just sitting there and you're just like bombarded with like horrible words and horrible statements. But like at the end of it, like it does have a somewhat happy conclusion, you know? And so it was an emotional journey. And that's actually something that is very prominent in all the films I picked. Movies that hit me emotionally and really get me like, even if it's not the most technically brilliant film, if it emotionally hits me, that's kind of where I'm kind of going for with my list. Cool. So on that, my number 2 is A Star Is Born. As a musician, like this movie spoke to me so heavily. Like I'm watching it the whole time, just like enthralled. We're going to talk about it more because it's somebody's favorite. So we're not going to touch on that much. And then my number 1 is Hereditary.
Hail Payman.
Hail Payman.
Sweet. Super good list. Super fun. Lots of things that aren't on my list. A lot of things that, I thought differently, but I think that it just speaks to like who you are, which I like. A lot of really interesting, cool, fun picks.
Thank you.
And I'm going to check out Blind Spotting.
It's definitely worth it.
I want to check that out.
Yeah.
One question.
Yes.
So sorry to bother you. We watched it. I want to know. Like, because you said all your films hit you emotionally. What hit you emotionally about that film?
About that film?
Yeah, I want to know. I'm curious.
It hit me emotionally in a way that it's not like sad emotions or anything like that. I wasn't sitting there being like, oh my God, my heart. It was more just like, I left that movie like, what the fuck did I just see?
Weird.
Because I know they had a lot of things to touch on that were important. There's like a lot of stuff about racial tensions. There's a lot of stuff about like the sort of like the numbness of the modern era towards a lot of issues that we're going through. A lot of stuff about social media and technology. Like there was a lot being covered. And so when I left the movie, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was reeling. I was sort of like, okay, like what the fuck? Like all these horse people, like there's so much going on. So it hit me emotionally, not in the way of like, wow, I feel like a deeper person, but it made me feel like, which I have so much to think about. Like my emotions were confused, and the fact that it left me with unsureness about how I felt, I think was part of why I enjoyed it so much, because it wasn't just something to just casually watch. It was something where like the director clearly had a lot to say, and even if it didn't all hit, it left me thinking. And at the end of the day, if a movie gets me like that, like concerned with it and thinking about it so much, then it sat with me enough that I felt like it deserved to be on my list, you know?
Cool. I really like that. That's
cool.
Good answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Quinn. Good question.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
Sweet. So, anything else about that list? I think there's a lot of movies that I would love to get more in depth on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same.
And that would be really fun to do like full talks on. Sorry to bother you. Like a really.
That's a lot. Like that's a lot
to unpack.
That's a lot to talk about.
Cool. So, do you want to run down your top 10
let's do it.
from 2018?
Okay. Let's just jump into it. So my number 10, I actually put mid-90s. It's Jonah Hill's directorial debut.
A lot of debuts this year.
Yeah, a lot of
this year and
debuts.
last year,
Fucking
too.
John Krasinski, Jonah Hill. So I just really liked it. I feel like it's his little masterpiece. I don't know. It feels like he was just building up to this his whole career, I think. I'm going to butcher this. Sonny Suljic and Lucas Hedges are incredible.
Yeah, shout out Lucas and Boyer Race as well.
Yeah, both. Yeah, that's on my list too. So I love that film. It made me feel really nostalgic without actually living that life. I've never been a skateboarder in California. So
you seem like the type.
No, I actually was never a skateboarder in California. So number 9, I put Private Life. This is on Netflix. Go watch it if y'all haven't seen it. Have you seen Private Life?
No.
Okay.
It's interesting. At one point you said it was your number 1.
Yeah, it was in my top 5. Paul Giamatti and Kathryn Hahn. I think that they are just incredible. They're equals in this film. I was listening to Kathryn Hahn talk about it, and they're just equals in the film. They're both powerhouses. They broke my heart. Yeah, it's really good. It's about a couple trying to get pregnant.
What's the director? What's her name?
Oh, so the director is Tamara Jenkins. I haven't seen any of her films, but she actually hasn't directed a film in a long time. So I think this was one of her she hasn't directed a film in a while. So I want to see her other films. Number 8, I have Boy Erased, Joel Edgerton. Again, I feel the same way. It was really emotional the whole time. Lucas Hedges and Nicole Kidman's relationship is really interesting in this film. And I love how it's a true story. And Russell Crowe. And just everyone's so good in it. So I thought the performances really stood out, and they were really vulnerable, which was perfect for the type of film that it was.
Super brave, like especially from
really
people
brave.
like Russell Crowe and Nicole Kidman
to play,
to go into that.
Knowing
with
they weren't-
also like the layers of like being loving parents or not.
Yeah, and I just love that because the
Yes.
film doesn't villainize the parents. Like, you actually believe that they think that their son shouldn't be gay and they're doing that for God. And like, you believe that they think that, so you also feel bad for them because they actually believe it.
Yeah.
So that's what's really sad
I think that's
too.
what Joel
which I
Edgerton
love.
did a good job. And
Yeah.
he plays one of the conversion
It also
therapists.
it almost reminded me of
Oh.
Call Me by Your Name, and that the parents aren't villainized in that film or in that story. You know, they're like
I
they're just
agree.
okay with him being gay. It's almost the same, even though it's the opposite.
It's
if that
kind
makes
of
sense.
it's like
Does that make sense?
yeah. But
Yeah.
Michael Stolberg is the best dad in cinema history in that movie.
Yes. Broke my heart.
I think the dad in 8th grade is up there too.
I literally have a note here about Josh Hamilton, my next
let's
number
roll into
7.
it.
Perfect,
That's
perfect
hilarious.
transition. 8th grade, number 7. Literally, Elsie Fisher and John Hamilton, they're amazing. Josh Hamilton weirdly reminded me of Bo Burnham. His energy was so much like Bo Burnham, so I don't know if that was on purpose.
I feel that.
I just thought that was really cool.
Think Bo has said too that it's kind of like him talking to Kayla.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
also
so
like,
maybe that's
it's
why
parts of
he
his
casted
mom
him.
as well, because his mom's like a hospice nurse. She's super like that, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah, I love that film. It's a coming of age film that also isn't coming of age. It's just like a universal truth. I love how Bo always talks about that, like, people go to the movie and they're like, oh, I'm so glad I'm not a teenager anymore. But like, it's a universal truth. We all kind of feel that and still can feel that. And he was talking about his like 30-year-old friends on social media. So I just love everything that Bo says about that film.
I don't know anyone who's seen that movie who didn't say that like it hit them impactfully
Exactly,
in some way.
yeah.
Yeah, I think because like he wrote it as I think he was 25, and he started having panic attacks on stage.
Yeah.
And then it's about like his anxiety, dealing with social media, dealing with like career, ego, friends, like all that stuff.
That's why I love it.
And
Yeah.
in putting it into like a young woman took it out of like like being so specific, and I think it made it way more relatable.
Oh, it definitely
everyone.
did. And it was just so heartbreaking
Yeah, I
too,
think
having her. And
it's
she's just like perfect casting for it too.
Yeah, it's a really good point. That's something that I was talking about actually to my mom, because we were talking about how we view the movie differently, and I was saying I think part of the reason everyone relates to it, even though it's like a very specific thing, it's like a 12-year-old girl, is because it's written from somebody who isn't a 12-year-old girl. So it allows it to be like, because he did it so well, but it's from his own perspective. Plus, comedians are often very open-minded people. It does create this weird thing where it is super open to everybody because he wrote it from a place of openness about something that isn't him. So a lot of people can get in there because that's how him as the writer got in there, you know?
Yeah, he also has such an interesting relationship with social media, because he's almost like a granddaddy, a founding father of YouTube.
Yeah.
He was there when he was like a kid, when he was born.
True.
So, and now he's making movies about it. It's cool.
I love that. So number 6, First Reformed, directed by Paul Schrader. This film, I had an expectation that it was just going to be about religion and a priest. I had no idea what it was about, and I was fascinated that it was weirdly about environmentalism, and like it really got into that, and also religion. So it just left me thinking, and made me really curious. And Ethan Hawke is really cool. I wasn't expecting anything from this film, so yeah, it's up there on my list.
I love that.
Number 5, Upgrade, directed by Lee Winnell. So the writing in this film really stood out for me, and I just love the AI element. I thought it was really simple. Is it an indie, like independent?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
It might be. I don't think it's A24.
Okay, well, it's
I'm
just
not 100% sure.
Yeah, really just cool film. Logan Marshall Green is really brilliant in this. And I'm just gonna give a little tidbit. So there's AI like in his body, like in his spine, because he gets paralyzed. So he, as an actor, is doing all these movements in his body, but his mind like controls it, but he can like go on autopilot and the body just moves, but you see the actor just doing that. So he like trained so much for it because it's kind of like his body is disconnected from his head.
That's crazy.
It's really
It's
crazy.
like two characters,
It's
like one
two
in the body
characters,
and
yeah.
one, and then he's reacting to
And
the
he's
body.
reacting because the AI
very
starts
cool.
to talk to him.
Ooh.
And he doesn't know what's going to talk to him, and neither does the guy creating it, and the movie ends on a really eerie note. So I recommend anyone who hasn't seen it to watch it because it's really scary, and it gives you like Joe Rogan feels, like fear about AI. And I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, it's a really crazy film.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it might appeal to people who like Black Mirror.
Yeah, exactly. Yes,
Very much, yeah.
exactly. Yeah, if you're into sci-fi at all or any, Black Mirror. Is a
Interesting.
common
And
thing
I guess
people
people
love.
who like watching like fantastic performances, that's probably one of the big selling points of this film.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, I'll check it
so
out.
I love that one. So number 4, Hereditary. It made me literally sick to my stomach in the best way possible. I've never had such a visceral feeling from a film, and I had the same feeling kind of watching A Quiet Place. And Alex Wolff and Toni Collette, they're really good in this film. It stood out so much. It's sad that they didn't get nominated for anything, but I guess it was too late. But Toni Collette, like I would give her Best Actress if she was nominated, honestly.
She should have
like,
gotten it, yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and same with Alex Wolff. Like, I don't know even what he does, but he should be doing more of what he does. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's so talented.
Yeah.
It's like, that film made me sick. I loved it. Just disgusted.
I kind of want that to be the soundbite that opens all of our episodes. that film made me sick. I loved it. All right, so welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. And then, number 3, You Were Never Really Here, directed by Lynn Ramsey, another female director on my list. We're going to talk about that one later, so I'll leave that one. And number 2, A Quiet Place, directed by John Krasinski, another directorial debut. Look at these guys.
Yeah, this is most of our lists.
Yeah, that's
debuts.
so cool. The tone of the movie had me on the edge of the seat. Edge of the seat. I was on the edge of the seat.
There was one seat in the theater.
There was one seat, and I was actually on the edge. No, but I was contorting my body like the whole time. It was like hard to watch that movie.
Yeah.
So kind of similar feels with Hereditary, and I love how it's just a simple story again about a family.
Mm-hmm.
It's a family movie. It's important. It made me like appreciate my family.
Yeah.
I walked away really like happy and sad from that film.
Yeah, I think that theater going experience was one of the most surreal I've ever had in the like known memory, because I remember everyone in the theater, it was packed. We were there opening night, and it was silent. And like if people were eating
Except for
candy,
the guy behind us sleeping.
Oh yeah, someone fell asleep.
Like snoring, which is
Someone fell asleep.
which kind of makes sense because the whole movie's dead silent.
Yeah, but it was like so like holding your breath. I was like, whenever someone had like popcorn, it'd be like, shh.
That's why we should all still go to the theater, friends, because it's a
Everyone.
really good experience.
Yeah.
Big truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my number 1, Star is Born.
Yeah. Star is Born.
You know?
I heard that Sam, what's his name?
Sam Elliott.
Yeah, did he get nominated?
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Happy with that.
Yeah, Lady Gaga, you know what? They were just born to play these roles
Yeah.
together. Their chemistry is addictive to
Yeah.
watch. They are so trained and just so like ready to go for what they did. And I just love their relationship in the film. But we'll talk about that later.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Really quickly before you move on, you look like you were about to say something. What was it about?
Oh, I don't remember.
Okay. I was just going to say, like, because A Quiet Place is not going to be brought up again, I just wanted to talk about
okay.
it a little bit more.
Let's
Oh, you're
talk
going to bring it
about it a
up?
little
Yeah.
more.
Okay, we'll
Let's
wait
do it.
when you bring it up then.
Let's do that.
Cool.
So good list.
Thank
yeah,
you.
great list. I'm a
Thanks.
big fan of your list.
Cool, that's
I'm a big fan
awesome.
of your list.
Thanks so much.
You're
Wow.
welcome.
So I will jump into my top 10. So
Oh, one more quick thing that I'm noticing is it's interesting how all of our lists towards like the top 5 or 6 have a lot of the same movies.
They
Yeah,
do.
it's cool.
They do.
yeah,
It is
I think
cool. I
cause,
love that.
because they're great movies.
They're great
true.
movies that you should all go see.
So I'll start. This is gonna be a lot of repeats, so I'll probably go pretty quick, and then we'll stop at certain ones. So my number 10 is First Reformed, Paul Schrader. It as I was watching it, I was like, wow, this is a very Taxi Driver-esque kind of, but with like Ethan Hawke and a priest. And then after I looked, and I was like, oh, Paul Schrader wrote Taxi Driver. So it was interesting. He definitely has like a technique and a way of storytelling.
Everyone go watch Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Taxi
Go
Driver,
watch
so
Taxi
another
Driver.
thing to add to your watch list.
It definitely was not my favorite after watching it, but as I talked about it and learned and figured stuff out, it moved up. Like it slowly creeped up my list until it broke into the top 10 and bumped out a lot of really great films.
I just want to say I'm really happy that it's on your top 10. I'm like surprised because you like we were sitting, and I was like, I can tell you don't like this movie,
Yeah, I
like the
wasn't
whole
into
time.
it.
But so I'm really surprised and like really happy because it really hit me hard. So yeah, I'm really happy it's on your list.
I like how it kind of slowly crept up for you. That's interesting.
That's cool.
A lot
Everyone
of
can do that.
my films did.
That's
Cool.
Using the Letterboxd app,
Yeah, yeah.
Which is
Follow
not
us on
sponsored.
Letterboxd.
We are not
We're
sponsored.
definitely sponsored by
But
Letterboxd.
maybe one day.
be
But yeah,
nice.
it slowly, like, I just slid it up, and I was like, this one, honestly, like, and it just, what did it bump? It bumped out, Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So we could have had a happy movie here,
But no happy
but no.
movies on the Family Movie Night podcast.
No,
No
no,
happy movies for
sad
us.
family.
It's a sad family.
Um,
It's a hereditary family.
Yeah, so I just really, like, enjoyed it. Anyway, Boy Erased, don't want to overtalk it, but same. The performances all around. I thought that Joel Edgerton, after The Gift, this is his second film he's directed, and it was just so different and so important and so steeped in, I think, a great message and a great story that it wasn't preachy. It didn't try to, like, it just showed something, and even he plays, forget his name, but he plays like the head of the conversion therapy camp.
Also
Oh, he
hadn't-
does?
I
Yeah.
had no idea it was Joel Edgerton
Yeah.
the whole time.
Interesting.
He's a
Which
chameleon. I also didn't know he was in The Gift.
Yeah.
Like he looks
Oh,
like a
he's
different.
definitely in The Gift.
I just didn't
Yeah.
know he looks like a different
Totally.
character in both movies. So watch both. Those
He's
movies.
unrecognizable. I think it's such a great performance. So many great performances. The whole movie is just like a masterclass, in my opinion. I think Nicole Kidman is unreal. Like the way they play their characters without judgment, like, is just so. They could easily have villainized these people, and they didn't. And even though I don't agree with them, I started to understand them, and I think that's what the beauty of a good story can do. Is even though I don't agree with you, I kind of understand why you're doing what you're doing, and I think that's just good character writing and good acting.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Just to touch on that, because I think that is so key, and a big part of a lot of my favorite films is the objectivity, being able to display a story without having too much of a bias. That's part of the reason why I love the show Atlanta, because they have this amazing way of portraying things where they're not saying specifically what is right or wrong. They're just showing you situations and allowing you to bring in like your own thoughts and feelings. And I do feel the same about Boy Erased, is that like they're not like condemning anyone's actions specifically. They're showing you a story and allowing you to understand where everyone's coming from. And I thought that was really beautiful. Another thing that I found super interesting in regards to the role that the director played is at the end, when they show him and they kind of get you to understand him a little bit, but you're still sort of don't get him a lot. And then at the end, they have that little clip that says he came out as gay 5 years after the movie's plot ended. And then suddenly I didn't even hate that character because you could tell he was just sad.
Yeah, he just hated himself.
Yeah.
Which is so sad.
The whole theater laughed actually when we went and saw it.
Yeah, because it must have been. It's so shocking
It's
when I read
shocking.
that.
Yeah,
I was like,
everyone
oh.
just burst into laughter. Another reason why you should go to the theater.
There's okay, one cool thing about Boy Erased, because while watching it, there's like the scene where they're telling them all how to stand with their arms, and then there's a scene where Lucas Hedges' character is looking out the window and he sees him standing privately, like Edgerton's character, and he has his hands facing backward, and I was like, oh, he's like, the film is telling me that he's in the closet.
That's really
And
cool
then
that you
and
caught
then-
that. Did you catch that?
I caught the hand thing, but I thought that was just hypocrisy. I didn't
Oh, okay.
realize that was
Yeah,
because
I
he was
didn't catch
gay.
any of that.
No,
It's
I mean-
very interesting storytelling.
I'll move on. My number 8 is Avengers: Infinity War.
Yeah.
Cool.
Which is only superhero movie apparently we're going to talk about. But I thought, which isn't even a happy superhero movie, because the ending,
So sad.
sitting in the theater of the end, even though like I knew that they are going to come back, the characters, like in some way it's Marvel, it still felt like a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt the weight of it, and it had built over like 10 years to this moment. And there was a moment I remember sitting in the theater near the end of the film. Spoiler if you haven't seen Avengers: Infinity War, the highest grossing film of all time. But where Tony and Thanos are having it out, and he gets stabbed, and I was just bawling my eyes out in the theater, and I was like, holy fuck, I didn't realize I loved Tony Stark that much.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like 10 years. I
True
was like,
that.
I've been like following him since I was like 11 years old, and like, yeah, like I loved this character, and so now I hope he doesn't die in the next one, which he
Probably will.
Probably will.
Probably
Yeah.
will. They're all
End
good.
of an era.
Yeah.
Endgame.
Sad.
Endgame.
It's interesting that you say it's the only superhero movie that we cover, because that's true, it is.
Yeah,
It was
Black Panther.
also going to be on my list, but it fell out at number 11. But I also agree that movie was beautifully made. One of the things about it that really I wanted to put it on my top 10 list was it's just technically an absolute marvel, pun intended. Like, it's such a fantastically made film. Like you said, 10 years building up to it, and they managed to stick the landing. That's crazy. There was so much going on, so many main characters, but it never felt like it was like too much stuffed in there. And yeah, it's something that definitely deserves all of the praise it got, but just because it's like part of this like massive shared universe kind of world, I felt like the Marvel universe as itself is something I wanted to separate from my top 10 list, because there's so much included in that, you know? So it's hard to just be Infinity War is my favorite, because if I'd watched it without watching the rest, it wouldn't be a top 10 movie. But because of the rest of it, it felt like a top 10 movie for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's a really like it's never been. It has like it's something like of this scale has never been done. And it keeps getting bigger every time. And I think you see with like the first Avengers to Age of Ultron that it falters. Like Age of Ultron is messy, and there's things, and they're trying to put things in, and they don't know how to do it. And in Captain America: Civil War, you see that the Russo brothers have a real hand at crafting, you know, arcs and like where to put focus and stuff. And then in Infinity War, I think it pays off in like tenfold. So yeah, I loved it, and that's why it's there. So then A Quiet Place, again. We touched on it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it was a masterclass in sound design and a great coming out party for John Krasinski.
Yeah.
So, Emily Blunt. So, Mandy, which, do you guys haven't seen it?
I haven't seen Mandy
No,
yet.
I haven't seen Mandy.
Just like a psychedelic trip of a film. It's so weird, and Nicolas Cage is perfect in it, and it's just weird as hell. It's like one of the weirdest movies
Cool.
I've seen.
Really
I love that.
It.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll hurry up. Then my number 4, I have Bad Times at the El Royale. I just thought ensemble work was great. I thought that it was intriguing. It was like the aesthetic was great. Just all around, every part of it was interesting, and it kept revealing itself in the way that Drew Goddard told the story from different perspectives and timelines was really cool and really fun to me. I thought it was a good follow-up for him after Cabin in the Woods. So yeah. And then number 3 is 8th Grade, which we have talked about at length. I would like to get into that more, but like really full length. I think there's a lot to delve into.
There's so
I think
much
there's
to talk
probably a
about.
feature episode in 8th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much to
And
talk about.
number 2 is Hereditary, which is coming up.
Fuck yeah.
And then my number 1 is You're Never Really Here,
Yeah.
the
We'll get into
Amazon
that.
Prime Lynn Ramsey movie.
Ooh.
Yeah. Watch it on Amazon Prime.
So,
I guess we'll just get right into it.
should we
then.
just jump into
Let's
it?
just
Yeah.
jump into it.
Kinda sounds
Oh, I
like-
had one question actually before
Yeah.
we jump into it. So Black Panther nominated for Best Picture. Would you guys ever swap it out for Avengers: Infinity War? Just a question.
That's a pretty interesting question,
Yeah.
actually. I have a lot to say there. My first thought is I think Black Panther was like a lot of fun.
Not
Like,
that the Oscars matter anymore to any of us, but
True. Well, the thing about Black Panther is I really enjoyed it. Like, I had a great time in the theater, but I think part of the impact of Black Panther wasn't it as a movie.
Yeah.
It was what it represented
exactly.
as a movie.
Yeah, which is great.
And so while I can understand and completely agree with wanting to spotlight the hell out of it because of what it represented, which was super important,
So
I
important.
think the Oscars shouldn't just be about sensationalizing movies. It should also be about the technicality of the movies. If you're going to have a movie nominated for Best Picture, you can't falter on either side of those things. And although Black Panther was really well made, Eric Killmonger was an amazing character, and I enjoyed the hell out of the movie, I don't think that it's Best Picture material.
A lot of the movies on our list were not recognized by the Academy. Just saying.
Big truth. And so I feel like out of the two movies on a technical level, I think Infinity War was better than Black Panther. So if we were going to nominate a superhero movie for the Oscars, it would probably be that one for me personally. But if we are going off of like what it meant culturally, I do agree with Black
It's
Panther
a
over
sticky
Infinity
subject.
War.
It's a pretty sticky one. I think we'd all agree with you on that, that culturally, obviously, it's so important. But
Yeah.
the film itself, it sucks that these days it's hard to talk about a film because it
You
can
don't-
get
yeah.
sticky like that,
can
which
get-
kind of sucks, you know?
Yeah.
I think with Black Panther that it is a great film, a great origin movie. I think it's a great superhero movie. I think that why it ended up getting nominated is because it's more consistent. Like if Avengers Infinity War is basically like watching like a crossover episode of something.
Yeah.
Which can be fun, but it's not really good. It's not traditional storytelling.
True.
Yeah, big truth.
Good point.
So that's what I think.
Okay.
So
Let's
get into it.
Yeah.
So
You Were Never Really Here.
You Were Never Really Here, directed by Scottish director Lynn Ramsay. I saw this film in theaters, and it just hit me and stuck with me in a way that some other films did this year, but it just had an effect on me personally. I thought that technically it was stellar. Johnny Greenwood did the score, who does a couple of Paul Thomas Anderson movies he's done, and he's Radiohead, I believe. He's from Radiohead.
Oh.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. So
Makes sense.
he just does these incredible scores, and every film he scores is different. Like he's great at disappearing into the film. Like if you watch Phantom Thread, it's this very, kind of unsettling, I believe it's just like piano score, and then you watch this and it's a bit more synthy, pulpy kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and he really transforms and brings out what's like the beating heart of each film he does.
That's cool.
So that's what I love about him. It's shot by Thomas Townsend. Ramsey and Joaquin Phoenix collaboration on it was so evident. It's based on a novella by Jonathan Ames, and I haven't read it. I have it at home, but I haven't read it yet. But I've listened to them talking about it, and they basically in it, the character of Joe is more like methodical. He has like his like gloves and tools, and he's more like precise about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of strip that all away, and I think
in the book he's more precise,
Yeah.
whereas in the movie
He's more
is he a
just-
bit more edgy in the movie?
he's more
or
like
a man?
He's like
Like
a
a
physical bullpen
Yeah.
hammer smashing through his world.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it worked a lot more for the story they were trying to tell.
I think so too. I mean, like he's obviously struggling with like pretty heavy PTSD, and the idea of having him be like he's good at what he does, but he's super like messy, and it's sort of like it feels like he's struggling all the way through, and I don't think that would have as properly come across if he'd been so like methodical and put
Yeah,
together in the
true.
way
It
he
was a
did
good
things.
choice.
It makes sense when you're reading a book because you can get into the mind of a character, but when you have to show the character's mind visually or just through dialogue, I think they made a very good choice in the way that Joaquin Phoenix presented the character.
I know he was talking about like doing a lot of like the violence with like a hammer and stuff, and they choreograph it and stuff with fake props, but you get on set and he said he held the hammer and he was like, no, I could like one blow would take someone out. Like we don't need this like dramatic like fighting, and I think
Yeah, the
you can
hammer
see
shit
in
is
it,
super
'cause it's,
cool. You know,
it's
do you
not
usually see
glorified.
stuff like that in films? Like just the fucking
I
boom.
I think
It's pretty crazy.
This might
like,
be a
it's dark.
bold
Yeah.
statement, but I think that a traditionally more masculine director would have glorified it a bit more
Oh, that's a good
and
point.
would have made it more a focal point and a selling point in the violence. But
Because violence is almost like sexuality in films.
yeah, it's similar.
It's like, oh yeah, I want to watch that. Like it's almost like it can be beautifully done and you want to watch it, but whereas in that film, it's like, no, it's disgusting. Kind of like a Hereditary,
sex
like
is
a
disgusting.
sick. Well, kind of. You don't want to watch two people have
it's
sex.
intimate. It's
It's
really
really
intimate.
gross. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's an intimate thing that you don't want to see, and I think the film does that really well. Just like in Hereditary, where spoiler alert, he sees his dead sister in the back of the car. Like it's disgusting.
Yeah.
So that's what I think.
Yeah, you never really hear how to really... I was actually literally in the car on the way here talking to my mom about this because she hadn't seen it. I was explaining the movie to her, and I said, one of the things about the movie that stuck with me so much was that, like, there wasn't... Although the movie was, like, unusual and kind of trippy, the violence felt so real. Like, I felt like I was really watching somebody do the things that were happening, and so... Yeah, because it wasn't sensationalized. It wasn't meant to be, like, greater than like... the actual act. It was meant to just show you what would happen if somebody did that, to make it feel more grounded and real. And it was like really tough to watch at times, but absolutely necessary to be portrayed like that.
Female director.
Yeah,
That's
I think
really cool.
the other thing,
Female director.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's
That's super
amazing. I
cool.
think that's something that she brings this wonderful vulnerability and sensitivity to Joe that I think a lot of people would have glossed over. Like more than half the film rides on his relationship with his mom, and you see him at home. Like you never see them go home, and like he goes and takes care of his mom and has this relationship, and through like the flashes of PTSD, you learn that like they were both in like an abusive home, and they kind of have only each other to rely on. And then like something that breaks my heart, so when I was rewatching it, something that stood out was when he first comes home, she's like pretending to sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh, I got you or whatever. And then later on in the film, she was shot when she was in bed reading, I guess. But the guy says, oh, she was asleep when we came in.
Yeah.
But I think it seems like something that makes me really sad to think is that she was, thinking it was Joe coming home, pretending to sleep, and then these guys come in, put a pillow over her head, and shoot her in the face. But she was awake the whole time.
Oh, man.
And it's those kind of things in this film that just, like, when I think about them, we're like, oh. Or the scene, there's just so much great visual storytelling.
And can we talk about how he wants to kill himself the whole time? Like, when he goes to the pond.
Oh, yeah, when he takes...
Throughout the film.
Well,
Doesn't he want to kill himself the whole time?
He dances around with harm and self-harm. Like, he has the knife, he puts it in his throat, and he's playing, and he has no real regard for his own well-being, it seems.
Yeah.
And then after his mom dies, he like puts on a suit, takes her to the lake, weights her down, puts her down, and he has his pockets are filled, and then he sees the
girl.
Like, Nina.
He has like, I think the girl is his only reason to live, kind of. It's kind of like in Upgrade, he's kind of on a killing spree a little bit, and kind of his only reason to live is because he saw his wife die in front of him, so he wants to kill like
tons of spoilers for Upgrade.
Yeah.
Tons of, fuck.
Yeah, so then that's the other main thing is I was trying to think, like, what is Joe's purpose in this story? Because if you watch it, really, so he shows up and he helps Nina, but then they take her back, and it kind of unfolds, and he didn't, like, you were never really here. He didn't really need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what his purpose, in my opinion, was he showed up, that scene with the when he goes into the house, he gets Nina out and he takes her and he shows her his sensitive side, like his love, like that he has. She tries to kiss him. He says, no, you don't need to do that anymore. He like takes care of her for maybe it's like 2 minutes of the film. He shows her affection and like real care, and then she's taken away again, and then she's taken to the house, but she ends up killing the senator. I think she does it herself.
Yeah,
she takes care of it herself.
I see this film again.
And he shows up, and it's already been done. Like, he shows up to kill him and to help her, but she didn't even need him. And I think his only purpose was to really, like, ironically, he did all this violence, but really it was like his
purpose to live.
His really like his authentic vulnerability, his sensitivity, and his love that he had with his mother. Those were what his purpose ended up being. Mm-hmm. Those were what were important about him, that made him different from everyone. And I think that's what I walked away with, was that we can like punch through life and be angry and push through all this shit that's coming our way, or whether we're taking it on or not. But really it's like the connection and love and like showing affection and connection, that no matter who we are, no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, that can really save another person. Mm-hmm. It just takes that one person to inspire. That's what I took out of it anyway.
I find it's interesting that you say that, because what you just helped me understand something that I hadn't fully understood in my first watch of that movie, which is like, I think as you're going along and the audience is picking up on that theme, is at the same time that Joe is understanding that. But he starts the movie, basically, he's a veteran, I gather. Yeah, and he has some pretty intense PTSD. So a lot of his life is based around violence. And now his job, since he's left the war, is to basically commit violent acts to save people. But I'm sure that in his own head, he believes that a lot of his life revolves around violence. Mm-hmm. And that he has basically only that to ground himself to who he is. Because that seems to be the only thing he does, apart from looking after his mom.
Just go put it.
Yeah, sure. I think that like by the end of the movie, when he starts to understand that like he doesn't have to commit violent acts anymore, and he can just look after this young girl, and like he has a calling again that's a peaceful one. That was like about the point when I picked up on those themes. So it's interesting how like the character and what he's going through really tie in with the experience of the audience as well. It's beautifully done.
Yeah, I think there's like one other aspect of it that I really love, which is the last scene where they're sitting in the diner. She like walks away, she like leaves him, and then pulls out a gun, shoots himself, blows his brains out, and everyone just keeps going about their day.
Yeah.
Like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, and I think I'm still trying to, like, of course, unpack that myself. I shouldn't say unpack so much. I'm still trying to figure that out for myself. But I think to me what it is partially like a thing of what it must feel like to have PTSD, to go through trauma, and you constantly feel like exploding and everything's just moving around in front of you.
Yeah.
And you're in your head, there's blood everywhere. There's this shit all over the ceiling. And everyone's just going about their day, and no one really stops to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
PTSD, kind of like in Leave No Trace, another good film. Didn't make it on my list, but Leave No Trace, he has PTSD. It's just like interesting when I feel like, I don't know, is that told a lot, that story? I don't know. PTSD is not something.
Maybe not so clearly. I think that's one of the things about You Never Really Hear that was dope is like you really felt it. One of the things that I would love to touch on and that I loved about the movie was the sound design. I don't know if you picked up on it when your second viewing. Remember when you'd seen it once, you said that you wanted to notice it again. But when it first hit me most prominently is the first time that Joe steps outside. And he's left his like really quiet, like beautiful home. He steps outside and the car sounds are like overbearing and intense and loud and so heavy. And at first I was like, what the fuck? And then I realized it's because like he was in a war. He was used to explosions and crazy shit and sounds all the time. So when he steps outside, just the sounds of the cars are disturbingly loud and so heavy because that's probably what it feels like in his head. Yeah. And I was like, wow, this movie is so enthralling. And it's an interesting thing about it is this is out of all the movies that I saw this year that I only saw once, this is the one I remember the most. I only saw it once, but I remember it fucking so clearly. Yeah. And that just goes down to the way it was done.
I think, yeah, and just from like other technical aspects that I think shine in this movie are one, how they show PTSD, because it's times when Joe's feeling high anxiety, then we get little reveals, but it's shown, it's never blatantly said he was in the war, he had an abusive father. It's never said, I don't think, at all, either of those things, but we just get flashes and you get to piece them together yourself. And there's this one part of it that the second time I was watching, I was like, oh, that's so interesting, and it kind of encapsulated my whole feeling of the movie, is when he's sinking and he decides to float up. He takes out the rocks and he's going up, and he like hits the top of the water, and whereas I think most films would show them coming up and getting the big breath and like finally, you know, like, oh, like the hero is born or whatever, like it just cuts to him walking and you don't get that relief of like him breathing.
Yeah, I remember that.
So like as an audience, you're like holding your breath and then it cuts to him walking and you're like, oh, like I didn't get that feeling of like relief.
I never picked up on that. That's really, really true. That's so cool.
Lynn Ramsey doesn't play into all the tropes.
Yeah, but
just
yeah,
like
and
what
also
we were talking
like,
about with the violence.
It just puts you in his, because I guess he never feels like he gets that relief.
No, he doesn't.
He's looking for it. That's why probably he's suicidal. He's
really
looking for that relief. He wants to.
Definitely.
He feels that way.
Well, I think that's what sets this movie apart so much is that it's so every aspect of it. Every aspect of the filmmaking behind the scenes, everything the crew did, everything that Joaquin did. I guess I haven't read the novel, but maybe the writing of the novella as well. It all just so deeply puts you in Joe's perspective and puts you in the story. Every choice that's made, like you were saying about that, is made to make you feel like him. And he does not feel comfortable. He feels really shitty. So I feel like this is one of those movies that if you're in the mood to like, or there's somebody who enjoys deeply emotionally impactful movies, this is like cream of the crop. But it must not have, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are going to watch it and don't like to feel uncomfortable and probably would find the experience like too much.
Yeah. I think it's also not real. It's like similar to a film noir, like tropes and stuff, but it's very different. It's a very different look at it. Or it's similar to movies like Taxi Driver or Drive or even First Reformed in like the way it's told as like a character study. It's still different. But it's still, no
pretentious elements whatsoever.
Well, or very pretentious
or maybe
elements,
possibly
depending who you are.
True, depending who you are.
But I just really like enjoyed this little film from this year.
Yeah. Sweet.
Should we move on?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
move on
happy
from
to.
Move on from You Were Never Really to A Star Is Born.
That star was always
Sounds
here.
like a happier film, but it's not actually.
Happier at times.
Happier at times.
Definitely
not as disturbing as smashing your head in with a hammer.
Yeah, big truth.
Yeah. Okay, so A Star Is Born. What do I want to say about this one? So yeah, what?
Oh, nothing. Go ahead.
So yeah, this film actually, all my films affected me a lot, but I saw this film twice in the theater. both times I had a very visceral reaction watching it. I love how it took me on a journey. I felt like I was really with them. I love their choice of, Bradley's choice of filming behind them when they're on stage, never in front. Mm-hmm. You're always behind them. It felt like you were behind the scenes. It felt like you were on the tour bus with them. And it's like, it could almost be cheesy, but it's not. Mm-hmm. Like the moment when she like steps out on stage and she sings, it's like, it could be cheesy, but it's just not. For me personally, it's just like, holy fuck. Like, it's a big moment. Bradley Cooper's chemistry with Lady Gaga is so good. Lady Gaga is an interesting one, too. She was talking about how she does so many characters for herself performing as Lady Gaga, so she wanted to make, what's the character's name? Allie. She wanted to make Allie as different from her as possible. And I thought she did that great. There was no Lady Gaga-ness to the role. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I concur.
To go off of something that you said that like really hit home with me is that there was a lot of times. Okay, firstly, going into the movie, I actually expected it to be cheesy just from the title and the poster. It seems cheesy. You know, and then there was a lot of times when I was watching things. I watched it last night for the first time, so it's really fresh in my mind. And a lot of the scenes, or my first thought was like, this on paper looks like it would be cheesy, but I'm so into it and I don't care. And I think part of the reason why is because, and this ties into the behind them shots of when they're on stage, is it's so well done in the way that it makes you really feel like you're there, a part of every experience. I never felt like I was watching it from afar. I never felt like the audience. I felt like I was with them at every step of the way, like you said. And that made me feel not like I was watching something that was potentially cheesy, but like I was experiencing it with them and I didn't care. I was just fully feeling these emotions, and it was so powerful that I never really had a chance to sit back and be like, oh, is this sort of like sensationalized? Is this sort of cheesy? Because I just felt like I was there. The scene, like I'm a musician, so I really related to a lot of the like the thoughts and feelings of the characters. But that scene when he brings her out on stage, like I felt so tense and so crazy, just like from my side of things, where I was like, imagine if that happened, if you like were just someone who had only ever performed in like bars with people that you know like personally, and then out of nowhere, like one of the biggest names in the field that you love so much was just like, hey, I know we didn't practice, but come on stage and do it in front of 10,000 people. Like, what would you do? In that situation, I felt exactly like her. I was like, there's nothing I want more, but that's such a fucking risk, you know? Yeah. And I was so stressed out and so scared, and I was just as much, would have been just as happy if she hadn't gone out, because I would have been like, that was like a fair choice. But then she decided to, and I felt like that much more overjoyed, because I was like, fuck yeah, good move, right? There's so many things about that movie that I was watching it, and I was just like, I related to it so heavily that I was just like emotionally going through the ringer all the way through. Yeah,
it's very visceral feeling watching it. I want to bring it. Oh,
no, go ahead. No,
okay, yeah. One more point. So Bradley Cooper's his sensory of drunk and his alcoholism and addiction in the film is so well done. You can, I think Austin said this one time, that you can tell like when he's been drinking, when he's not. I don't know if he used animal work for his acting, but like he seems like a big bear or something. Yeah. I don't know what his animal would have been, but just like his sense of belief in that and his body, and like just like when he's drunk on stage at the awards ceremony, it's so like horrific to watch. And even when he like subtly, when he's in rehab, and I missed this part for the first watch, but when he subtly says that he had tried to kill himself in the past, and he just subtly says it, and it's just so sad. My only problem with the film is just like the choppy like editing, and you couldn't tell kind of what time it was sometimes. Like the editing was a little weird, but I just like didn't care because it was his first film, and it was just so well done that I was just fine watching it. It was just choppy, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that was something that like it didn't make my top 10. I enjoyed the movie, but it wasn't. It just like it didn't hit me as much as a lot of other stuff this year. I thought that it felt a little bit like he had shot so much stuff that he loved that he didn't want to get rid of it, and so he put it all in the movie. But there's like a lot of things that I feel like it felt like the story could have moved faster for me personally.
Interesting.
There were things that could have kind of picked up, and like I was already in so like just to move it along. But that was just my it just felt a little long in parts, and then it felt a little short in other parts. Like it felt like they sat in like a parking lot for like 10 minutes, and then when he goes and finds out that the farm that his brother's supposed to be taking care of that has been sold off to a wind farm was 30 seconds, and it felt like there was a like a disjointedness of like how much time was given to certain aspects of the story.
I do wonder if the choppiness, like I'm not saying it was on purpose, but I just had a thought that I wonder if it's supposed to just kind of be like this crazy dream because it's obviously built up to the end and their love is so intense and so fast and quick, and he has such a fast-paced, quick life, and he's an addict. It's such a like insane life to live. So I don't know if the editing is done on purpose to make you feel like, holy shit, what's going on?
Yeah, kind of like how she's probably
how
feeling.
she's feeling too, because it seems to move really fast. And I don't know in real life if it actually would. It seems to, though, these days with social media, it seems like it just moved so fast. Like she gets all the views and then she's like on tour. And then from then on, it's just kind of a crazy, like, woo, woo, woo. And then they get married. And it did feel a little bit, where is this coming from? But maybe it was on purpose. I don't know.
I think it's like a sweeping ballad almost, like of like great proportions that it's kind of hard to fit it into like a 2-hour movie. I think that's probably where that comes from.
Yeah. There was a lot going on. I like what you just said about how potentially that could have been a choice to represent Lady Gaga's character arc. It's very possible because, like, I guess to experience something like that would definitely feel like so out of nowhere and so disorienting that this potentially was a choice to make that section of the movie purposely disorienting. I mean, because you can imagine like it does happen pretty much overnight, and her life changes so much. I think if it wasn't on purpose, it might have also had been because they had to balance some pretty like strong character arcs for two pretty strong personalities. So it might have also just they might have had trouble figuring out how to do that and properly pace the movie at the same time. I do agree the whole wind farm thing came out of nowhere.
It did come out of nowhere.
I thought potentially when I watched it that was because for him it came out of nowhere, but they didn't dwell on it enough. I felt like there could have been maybe a bit more reason for me to be invested in the falling out of Bradley Cooper's character and his brother. I liked both characters, but the wind farm thing is super sudden, and I think maybe like a bit more of a draw out as to why they fall out would have been good. But like once again, there's something about this movie where I was talking about previously, is that the emotional heart and the way that the movie made me feel kind of overshadows the technical problems. For some reasons, partly because it's Bradley Cooper's first movie, so I give him the benefit of the doubt. In addition, like, that's what's most important to me is, like, you can watch a movie that's not the most perfectly well-made movie, but if it hits you, and you can't control that, you know? Yeah. And that's why it's my number 2, because I just, like, I acknowledge it wasn't technically perfect, but emotionally, like, the whole way through, I was like, this is, like, I don't really have anything I want to change about it. To me, it kind of felt like the La La Land of this year.
Yeah.
That's fair.
You feel that?
I still love La La Land. I want to watch it again. I still love it.
I love it. It's a fantastic film.
I still love it. Austin's meh about both those.
I like La La Land more than this, I think. I think what I appreciated, though, is that the music didn't take over. I was scared that it was going to be... Or not scared, but like I thought it might be like very like a musical, and it was really more about the characters, and the music supported their journeys, which I appreciated. I thought that was a very good choice. I
actually was thinking during the movie as like, is this a musical? Because although there are full like performances, one thing I usually find that separates a musical from a movie with music performances is that musicals, they like have the characters talking about the situation they're currently in with the music. The music is part of the story. It's like you couldn't tell the story without the music.
I think it's not then.
Yeah, because like as much as they're singing about their emotions, they're not like, look at me doing this thing that I do.
Yeah,
you know, it's like they're just like singing songs. And so it almost felt like really beautifully worked in concert footage more than it felt like a musical. But could you classify it as a musical? Because in the same vein, like it sort of like is carried a lot by the musical performances, which are beautifully shot, by the way. Like if I watched like one of my favorite artists had released like a live performance filmed in the way that they filmed it in the movie, like I would be fucking so excited. It was so, I felt like I was on stage, the audience out there, the way that you're like right up beside his face when he's singing sometimes, like it was so good at placing you in the situation while he was singing and performing.
It did a good job of taking away the glamour of it. And I never once felt like, oh, this guy's so cool. I kind of felt sorry for him.
Yeah.
You know, when he's on stage, and there's just things where it's like he doesn't want to be there.
I felt like that with her too. Going back to the choppiness of it, she moves so fast in her career. And it's interesting seeing her as an artist. She's kind of like her artist, and she's herself at the beginning of the film, and then lets people kind of change her, obviously. But it's interesting, like, I wonder if she thinks that she was making good work, like when she's like on SNL and he calls her ugly. And like I agree with him almost. You kind of agree with him in that moment. Like, obviously he shouldn't say that, but like she's different and she's not like herself as an artist, and I thought that was cool too.
That's such a tough topic. I could go on that for hours, because where do you draw the line between a natural progression of a career? Like, of course she's different than she was when she started, because you have to have a career of that magnitude. It makes perfect sense that once you have those sorts of resources and you have those sorts of large numbers of fans, that you're not going to just be singing like you did at a drag bar. Like, it makes perfect sense to me that she would have to make those changes to her career to be an artist of that magnitude. And so I never really faulted her. And as long as she was happy with her career, then who am I to say that she did it the wrong way?
That's the thing. I don't know that she was happy with what she was doing. So that's the interesting.
It's not explicitly stated.
No, it's not stated.
If she's not happy with her career or what she's doing, then obviously bad move. But if she's happy with where she's gotten to, then all the power to her. And I think Bradley Cooper's character was making the assumption that she had no real pleasure in where she was now.
And he was really jealous.
He was really jealous, exactly. And so you can see where he's coming from as well, though, because he's also saying, like, you aren't the same person that you were when we met, and I wish you hadn't changed for your art. But he never changed for his art, and it was his downfall. He never changed to be a better musician. He stayed the same flawed person and eventually killed himself because of it. So the advice he's giving her, although it's from a good place, he didn't even take his own advice, and it was his downfall. And so it's like nobody's really right in that situation, and it is problematic on both ends. So I can see where they're both coming from, which is why it was so powerful to me.
I think that whole scenario is interesting, and yeah, it could take a while to talk about it. But I think to me it was almost like it wasn't so much what she was doing. It was that she wasn't, the person that he thought maybe, or that she wasn't representing herself that way. And also that he was losing control of her, and that she was becoming her own person. And I think, I don't want to speak a lot about stuff that I don't know, but I think especially when dealing with addiction, and he was like abandoned and stuff, it makes sense for his character to want to kind of have a little bit of control. Totally. And when he loses that, he starts drinking more, he starts getting scared, he starts kind of taking it out on her.
I think Lady Gaga said, actually, and this is my personal takeaway, I don't think that she is the artist that she is until the end of the film when she's singing to him. I think that's the artist she is. So I think when she is doing like that pop music and she's on SNL, I don't think she's happy. My personal take, and I don't think that that's who she is, and I don't think that that's the art that she wants to be doing, because it wasn't really like at the beginning. She is similar at the beginning of the film and at the end.
Yeah, true.
In the art that she's doing, so I think that's when she becomes a strong woman, kind of. Because she said herself, Lady Gaga said that she doesn't think Ally was very strong. I think she's strong, but
interesting role for Lady Gaga to play specifically. I think that like the casting of Lady Gaga is part of what made that movie.
Yeah,
I think she's perfect for it.
Yeah,
absolutely, because of Lady Gaga's progression as an artist. It's not the same as Ally's, but you can see parallels.
You can.
And so just like great film. I guess we should move on to the next one, because this has been running a bit long. But basically what you could take away from the fact that this is running long is there's a lot of amazing things to say about a lot of amazing movies that have come out this year. Yeah. So we're going to end off on like the lightest note, probably. We're going to go into Hereditary. So Hereditary is my favorite movie of the year, primarily for the fact that not only was it a technical marvel in a lot of ways, there's nothing about that movie when I was watching it where I felt like was like shoddy. Like the entire way through, I was fully invested, fully enthralled, and with multiple watches, because I've seen this movie the most out of all the movies on my list of this year.
How many times have you seen it?
Like
Autumn?
4 times.
Wow.
And with every
That's
wow,
a lot.
yeah, it's
I
heavy.
couldn't do that. That's heavy.
It's a lot.
It was hard to watch.
I'm personally a fan of horror, and
Right.
a lot of the reason why is because I think horror is really good at drawing you into a story because it just is so provocative that when you're watching something that has that many intense emotions attached to it, you're really invested. And so once you're that invested, horror has an opportunity, unlike any other genre, to really help you feel or learn new things because you're so invested in what you're experiencing. But a lot of horror movies don't take that opportunity. They draw you in, they throw a bunch of meaningless shit at you, and then you leave feeling gross. But what this movie did really well is it drew you in and had a lot to say and a lot to experience. I often explain this movie to people, as I'm sure you guys may have as well, as like a really intense family drama that just happens to be really scary too. And a lot of the most fearful elements of this film aren't things that are horror. As we talked about and touched on earlier in the podcast, the scene where he's driving in the car and he decapitates his sister, like the big twist scene that
He
took
didn't
everyone.
do it. The cult did it.
True.
True.
But he thinks he did.
Horrific.
And you don't
That's
know
true.
when you're watching it,
Yeah.
right? That scene, like you said, you
Yeah.
felt physically ill. So did I. I think every single person in that theater, especially with that like 2-minute shot of Alex Wolff's face after that happens.
He reacts perfectly to
Oh.
that. A shitty
Is there a
actor
perfect
would go,
way?
Yeah.
It's like, what? Or not a shitty actor, but somebody who wouldn't play it truthful. So
Totally.
he's perfect for it.
Oh, like you could see every single thought or feel every single thought he was having just from his eyes. That close-up shot and knowing what's in the back seat and not seeing it until like 5-10 minutes after it happens is that much more crazy. That whole sequence, like I
Hearing-
felt like I was having a panic attack. Like it was so powerful, and
he's high.
And he's high too. And like as a pot smoker, like that's just a whole nother element to it. Like I felt very much
Horrifying.
horrified by that whole situation.
And Toni Collette screams.
Fuck.
And you don't get to see her, but you just hear it.
Yeah.
Hear her scream.
That adds to like the detachment that Alex Wolff is probably feeling there
Yeah.
too. Like the fact that you don't see the reaction, you just hear it and look at his eyes. Like, damn, everything about that scene and that movie really, like, it's crazy to me. When that happened, I was like, where can this movie go from here?
Yeah.
Like, what is the next step? Because
Yeah.
to me, like, although it wasn't satisfying, that felt powerful enough to be a conclusion of a story.
Oh, yeah.
You know, obviously it wasn't, but like,
Was it like 20 minutes in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe.
I
Crazy.
think that was like what the moment when I was like in on it was that, because especially marketing wise, it was so focused on, what's the girl's name?
Charlie.
I was so focused on Charlie and that and her and the mom and stuff, and then so when that happens, I was like, what is this movie?
Yeah, and it's like
So-
Toni Collette and Alex Wolff
Yeah.
as the leads. You're like, oh, interesting.
And I thought that scene, the choice on Ari Aster's point to not show it, it just builds that gut feeling, and it doesn't let you off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
Like you never see Charlie's body
Oh, but you see
at
her
all.
face.
You see her head, but you
Oh,
never
it's
see the
so
body. You
disturbing.
hear
Oh
Toni
my
Collette
God.
talk about it to Joni,
Yeah.
but you never actually see it. And I think that's the great thing is he builds the cinematic language too. Like that shot it's a great shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is also followed up when he sees his dad's corpse. It's basically the same shot of just his face reacting to it. You do see the corpse and stuff, but then that time you see her in the background.
Yeah.
And he builds this cinematic language of like long takes that at first feel unsettling, but then feel horrifying.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the film does really well, is setting up this. Yeah, it's almost like a language to the audience, and then it pays off in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that Ari Aster is the director's name. Something that Ari Aster really understood about horror that I think a lot of horror directors don't, is that the horror doesn't come from the unsettling imagery. It doesn't come from the jump scares. What it comes from is the situation itself and like understanding what all of these things that are happening actually mean and the weight that they actually carry. You could watch like thousands of people die on a screen and not give a shit when you leave.
Yes.
Because it's just people dying. And that happens on TV on movies all the time. But if you understand what that death means to the surrounding family of these people, what that death means to the surrounding community, what that death means in this movie specifically to like the survival of the entire world because a demon is now going to take over the planet because of how everything turns out. Like, that's where the horror came from. Knowing that, like, it's not just someone dying. It's, like, people's lives being ruined because someone died. That's where I was, like, so impacted by this movie and where Ari Aster killed it. Because it became not just a horror movie, but just, like, an emotional, like, power play all the way through. I felt so many things that I've never felt in a horror movie.
It's interesting too, but even without the demon element and all the horror, even the death of a child in a family would still, like, and what he did would still, and even if Toni Collette wasn't, like, without all of the cult and anything, it would still ruin their lives. Like, their lives would be ruined forever. Their family could never be the same. It's that story with a child dying is told in so many, like, Rabbit Hole. It's a play. It's also a movie, and it's about a kid who dies, and it just always destroys families. So it's just like so heartbreaking.
I think something to kind of with that feeling of not being let off the hook is the whole film has the score is insanely disturbing.
Yeah.
In a way of, like, there's things happening that you shouldn't feel uncomfortable in. Like, there's a scene where she's going to see Joni for the first time, but there's this, like, pulsating thing, like, sound happening, and it makes you feel, like, ill.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know why I shouldn't feel this way. And there's, like, the camera tilts upside down, and there's certain, like, shots. So even when the characters don't feel that way, as the audience, we're put outside of them, and we feel this oncoming dread. And it doesn't let up until the end when Payman enters what's his name?
Alex Wolff.
Alex Wolff.
Yeah.
He enters the actor Alex Wolff. And then the music's happy and you're let off the hook. And the movie ends with this weird joy.
Yeah.
True, yeah.
Because we've been put in the seat of the cult the whole time. Like, it starts, we are outside the whole time.
Yeah.
It's an interesting way
It's hard. It was hard for me to love the ending. I feel like it was building up for that, and it was probably done the best way possible, but it was hard to love.
I liked it more the second time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's a second
it's just
watch
hard.
ending.
It's hard to like it. Like, it's hard to...
Yeah, because the first time, like you said, the promotion was misleading, and which is amazing. Shout out to that. Because it made the actual experience of the movie that much more dope. And the first time I watched it, because the promotion was misleading, when the person I thought was the main villain gets decapitated, I'm like, okay, there's so much more going on here. And you have all this intense energy being built by the score and by the acting, where you like dread. You're just like, something is coming, and you don't know what it is. And then it finally shows up.
It really throws up on you.
Yeah, it's something happened at the end where I was like, what? This isn't what I expected. I'm so confused. This is like, I remember, I think I said to you guys previously, first time I watched it, I felt let down by the ending. The second time I watched it, I could not think of a better ending.
Did you know right away it was a cult?
Well, I kind of gathered.
I didn't know right away.
I kind of gathered, do you mean like when the movie was done?
Yeah.
Yeah, I gathered it was a cult from that.
Okay.
I think
I just didn't know that the girl, like, I didn't know it traveled through everyone. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that the
Payman,
Payman had traveled through everyone.
Yeah,
I don't think
okay.
Payman went through everybody.
Or through like
just through
Charlie, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't, and wasn't it in Toni Collette
No. Yeah, at one point
when she's doing flying around and stuff.
Oh yes.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So
and it was
does it go into the dad? Like,
not in the dad. And
Okay.
but at one point it's mentioned that it was supposed to have been inside of another child that passed away.
Well, it says
Toni Collette's brother.
Yeah, she says.
Oh yeah, because
in the meeting she speaks about her father starved himself, which I'm trying to think. So basically, she says like he was manic depressive and he starved himself, and then
her brother killed himself.
Her
right?
brother, who was schizophrenic, killed himself because his mom was trying to put people inside of him.
Yeah.
And then so since he killed himself, there was no host for Payman.
Yeah.
And then when Alex Wolff's, what's his name? What's the character's name?
Oh.
Jamie, pull that shit up.
Anyway,
Quinn, pull that shit up.
He was born. The grandma was kept away from him.
Yeah.
And then so I could really only put it into Charlie and then had to get it out of Charlie and into him. What a horrible grandmother.
One of the things about the movie is in the first watch when you don't know
Peter.
When you don't know that there's a cult
Peter.
In the first watch, you're watching all these things and you're just sort of like horrified by what's happening, but you don't understand the subtext. In the second watch, the cult reveal makes way much more sense because you see where the cult is active throughout the entire plot.
True.
There's never a point where they like shy away from the cult being actively controlling everything. But because you don't know there's a cult in the first watch, they don't shy away from it, but you don't know. You don't have that information. In the second watch, because you know the cult is controlling everything from the very beginning, it's super apparent.
It's probably a better watch the second time.
I think
exactly.
I think that's a really great. It just shows like a really good film. Like something the film, whether or not you like the film, but Split, it does kind of a similar thing where the first watch you're like, okay, this is the story, and then something happens and you're like, oh, now this movie is totally different. And then you rewatch it and you're like, oh, like it's not so much in that one, but it felt that way of like rewatching it. You're like, it's a different movie. Yeah. Because you're privy to information.
Very true.
And I think that just shows like an intelligently written script.
And that's another thing is like I said, every time I watched it, it was a different experience. That's why I've seen it 4 times. The first time I watched it for the what is this movie? The second time I watched it because I was like, I get what this movie is. I'd like to see it with that information. The third time I was more focused on the technical aspects of it. And by the fourth time, I just realized that there was no complaints from me, and that's why I loved it and wanted to watch it again. You know, like there's just something about all the way through that movie, no matter how many times I've seen it now, I just, regardless of the fact that it's heavy and it's not something like, I can't say I enjoy it. You know, it's a hard word to put into a movie like this. I felt too, you know, but it's worth watching it several times because
it's worth exposing yourself to something like that.
It's like cryotherapy.
Because it's not like horrific. Like I haven't seen any Lars von Trier.
Von Trier.
I haven't seen any of that. It's not like it's not like that, obviously. Yeah. I don't feel the need to watch those films, but something with Hereditary, it's like, why not expose yourself to a really dark place?
Yeah, because
without getting super visual.
Yeah, because part of the reason I love horror is because it's still something that we experience as human beings. People don't like to go deeply into those negative places because they want their art to help them escape. But sometimes escaping into a dark place when you're going into your art can help you understand and appreciate your life on a day-to-day more and help you feel better. Like that's still a part of the human experience, and it's worth investing yourself in. And it's a shame that it's not recognized as much in the Academy and all these other for example, like people in general don't seem to dig it. Like you said, the D+ cinema score. Yeah. People leaving the theater were just so rattled by how heavy and dark it was that they thought it was a bad movie. But negative in terms of tone and negative in terms of like the quality of the film are entirely separate things, and people get those crossed over a lot.
Yeah, I think that horror is interesting because it is kind of going through a little bit of a mainstream resurgence right now. I mean, even Get Out won Best Screenplay last year.
And another film that I just think everybody should see.
Get Out?
You know?
Yeah.
Big time.
Like, there are... Hereditary is, like, making waves. It seems like... There's so many that I'm forgetting right now. But, like, through James Wan, like, The Conjuring, I think was, like, a really interesting... even Insidious are okay, but Saw, like... So James Wan's films are pretty interesting. But there hasn't been much good horror since, like, the first Paranormal Activity.
Yeah.
Until now. And now it's going through a resurgence of, like, intellectual horror movies are kind of it right now.
I don't know if this is...
exciting.
It's true. And I don't know if...
After your point.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if this is, like, related or not, and this is sort of like an out-of-the-blue thing, but I think that The Babadook really helped people understand what horror should be. Because it was... it's scary as fuck. And it also has meaning and like has a lot of elements about it that aren't just horror that are interesting. And ever since that movie came out, during a bit of a dry spell of horror, I've noticed a resurgence in people really wanting to put like a heart into their horror movies. You know what I mean?
I think that, at least for me personally, I think like because it probably is a horror movie, but not mainstream horror. And The Babadook at least came on my radar pretty big. And then now the Hereditary and things like Get Out, like they're like pushing through that barrier into the mainstream, which I think is super important. Hopefully someone can do that for comedy.
Yeah.
Because there are, I'm another talk.
I'm really excited for Us. I think Us is going to make...
I think we're going to do well in the future as well.
Yes, I think we're going to do really well.
We should wrap up.
The movie Us by Jordan Peele. I think that's going to... I think that's going to, hopefully, if it does well, continue that trend towards better made horror movies, because if Jordan Peele can stick the landing a second time, I think horror is going to open up even more publicly.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so this has been a lot of fun.
This is great.
I'm going to let you do the outro because you're our mascot.
Thank you. So that was our first show. Following this show, we're going to be doing a little bit of a different formula. We're going to be doing
what?
Whoa.
Family movie night kind of thing. So one of the family members, who are us, get to choose the movie that we're all going to have to go away, watch, and then come back and we'll review. And they can be old movies, new movies, any genre of movie. We can choose a dumb movie, a new movie that's coming out in theaters. And our overall hope is to create some kind of community where if you're listening to the show, you can go off and watch that movie and come back and have some people to listen to and talk about it with and interact with us as well.
And go hang out with your friends and go to the theater.
Yeah, go to the theaters, watch some movies, and just if maybe you're interested in getting more into movies, or if you are going to watch movies anyway, it's a fun way to just rewatch old movies, watch new ones, and check out what's coming out.
Absolutely.
So, without further ado, we are going to flip a coin between Quinn and Autumn, and then one of them is going to choose what our next podcast is going to be about.
Are we going to say what our choices are?
Nah, say it after you flip.
Okay, so heads or tails?
I'll do heads.
I'll do tails then.
Okay.
Should I flip?
I don't know how to... Yeah, can you flip it?
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Who's heads?
Me. What's it going to be?
It's heads.
Oh, shit. Okay, so we're going to talk about... Mandy.
Mandy or just Mandy?
Mandy. Next episode, we're going to talk about Mandy on the horror note.
I'm glad.
Cosmatos is his name, the director?
I don't know.
Nicolas
Cage. Yeah, we're going to talk about Mandy.
I'm excited about that because it was brought up briefly during this podcast, and just the way you described it, I was like, "It's something I need to watch."
Me too. I love trippy shit, so I'm like, yeah.
I will say that the Mandy is available on Shudder, SHUDDER.
Mm-hmm.
It's a horror movie streaming service. It's $4 a month. I'm not plugging Shudder, but I'm just saying this is how I found it.
Yeah.
You sign up for a free week trial though. So if you want to sign up for a free week,
can just
watch it. And then
Harris Anderson is one who told.
Shout out.
Shout out Harris. Please listen to our podcast, Harris.
We should, if we can, we should watch it all together.
Yeah,
that'd be
really cool. Let's watch it together.
I have Shudder now, so
yeah. Sweet.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, that's how I watched it.
Okay,
beautiful.
let's watch it together.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay,
let's sign off. Thank you so much if you're still listening and watching. My name is Austin. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm not very active or interesting, but give me a follow, give me a like, give me a shout out, whatever. Quinn, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm Quinn Grayson on Instagram. And yeah, I don't post much either, but maybe I should now.
My name's Autumn Woods. I'm a musician and one of the co-CEOs of Relatives, where you're likely watching this podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can find me at Autumn Woods on Instagram, Facebook, or you can find me through the Relatives Media, which is Relatives Media Inc. is the company. Relatives Recordings is the name of the Instagram profile. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, guys.
You can also find him in his bedroom.
Yeah, that's a song of mine. You can find me anywhere. I'm most places. You'll find me downtown and sometimes.
Yeah, you'll see me around. Yeah. You'll see us around.
I hope so.
Well.
Yeah, hit us up if you want to watch a movie with us.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.